So the first step in soap making is going to be to gather your supplies and make sure that you're wearing all of your personal safety equipment before you begin. Safety first. So you notice here, we've got some measuring bowls with high sides. We've also got a container to put our soap in when we're finished. We've got mica, if you so choose. You can make your soap without any colorant, fragrance, or anything whatsoever. You're also going to want a hairnet or a hair tie, goggles. You're going to want to make sure that your personal attire, you've got long sleeves if you so choose, as well as long pants and shoes, just in case you make any spills on yourself. You're going to want a scale for measuring. You're definitely going to want a stick blender. This soap can be made by hand, but it takes a very long time. I dare you, ask me how I know. You're also going to want some good quality spatulas for scraping out your bowls, and make sure that you've got gloves. And for when you're mixing your lye, you're going to want to make sure that you've got mask or a well-ventilated area, or preferably both. Now here I'm showing you these two spatulas. The first one has a squared tip and a round tip at the top. It's very versatile. It's good for getting in those small crevices. And then a larger spatula for scraping larger areas in bowls. You won't see me using that one in this video because I was multitasking on more than one batch. And in the sink, you're going to see that I have a bowl of soapy water ready to go just for my soaping stuff. It contains Dawn as well as vinegar to make sure to neutralize and balance the pH, because the lye solution is caustic, which is very basic. And then we've got an old rag as well. So for the lye water, please follow all precautions on your product. This can be a dangerous endeavor if you're not careful. I'm going to link a video down below to one of the soap makers that I personally enjoy watching. I feel that she's very thorough and very concerned with making sure you're doing it right and doing it safely. So please watch her video on how to do your lye solutions properly and safely. Excuse me, tongue-tied. Safely. There's no way that in this short video I can manage to tell you everything that you need to know. So make sure that you're doing that. That definitely separates you from being a soap fan and a soap maker, is getting that lye solution made properly and safely. So as you notice right here, I take and put my lye solution in a container that has a lid that is not easily knocked over, so that it does stay safe. Now, I normally do slightly larger batches, so this is quite a big container for this one tutorial, but just bear with me. Alright, you're going to start by taking your hard oils and melting them down after you've measured them. A hard oil is anything that is not liquid at room temperature. So you'll see here that I'll be measuring out first the coconut oil. Coconut oil can be kind of a pain sometimes. The cooler it gets, the harder it gets. The warmer it is, the more liquefied it is. If you prefer to warm up your coconut oil and use it as a liquid to pour in there, that's fine. I did do it as a solid, and you'll see here that I am human and I over measured, but it was okay because we've got it all in a container and I only use this for soaping. You're going to want to make sure not to cross-contaminate with anything else in your kitchen. That makes sure that this stays just for soaping. So I did go ahead and pull some out, put it back in the container, and then I'm measuring it out to 48. So if you'll notice, I'm showing you the measurements for the oils, but I did not show you measurements for the lye. There are also lye calculators down below. Make sure that you use them for your recipe. Next, I'm adding shea butter. I feel that the combination of those oils are excellent. Next, we have our liquid oils. And our liquid oils are anything that is liquid at room temperature. So while our solids are melting, we're going to be pouring our liquids, and that is olive oil right there. And then you'll see me drizzle from the top in just a moment the castor oil. And you'll notice between each of them that I push a button that tears the scale. And what that is it just resets it to 0. If you don't have a scale that does that, just measure everything individually. But most scales these days do have a tare option. They're excellent. And you by no means need a scale this large. You can get one at a lot of the office supply stores that will be more than adequate for this. And there he is. Now, if you over drizzled, there's not a whole lot you can do. If you're close, it's okay. Blend your oils. So I have the melted hard oils in the bowl there, and I'm going to pour our liquid oils in. Now, one of the things I did fail to capture is temperature is important when you're soaping. So I did measure the temperature of my oils once I blended them together. And I did my lye water ahead of time and allowed it to cool. So that's one of the instructions that you'll see in the other video. So the next part that we're going to do is the colorants. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to use just one color of mica and add it in 3 different stages so you can get 3 slightly different variants just for some fun. Be creative with it and do what you please. So to start with, I'm actually using a tablespoon, which is more oil than is necessary, and I'm putting it into one of these little silicone, kind of like a beaker almost, that I have. I find them super handy. And we're going to be using Mad Mica's brand, and the color is Voodoo. With Valentine's Day for us right around the corner, just thought it would be nice to use kind of a pinkish red. So we're going to take a tablespoon of this oil, and really we could have gotten away with a teaspoon, but I just like it to flow well. And we'll just pop it in there. And I used that spoon for another batch, so I wasn't too concerned about getting every last little niblet. And then we're going to take our package of mica, and when you order from Mad Mica specifically, they come with a very hefty teaspoon of mica in each of their sampler bags. And that is actually way more than enough for this batch of soap, but I wanted it to be an intense color, so we went with the whole thing. But for any manufacturer that you order micas, colorants, fragrances from, please just follow the manufacturer's directions, what they suggest. And I just have a chopstick here that comes from, takeout food or anything like that. We just grab a few extra when we go, and we just take the clean chopsticks that have not been used and use that to stir in our mica. One of the things I like about using chopsticks is when I'm finished with them, they break down in the environment. You can put them in the recycler. There's lots of things to do. So like I said, one color of mica can make several colors of soap. Keep it simple, you guys. Start off simple. So we're going to take our solution and we're going to add half of our mica solution to our oils. And there we go. Now, one of my favorite things about soaping is to watch that mica just swirl in the oil. It's pretty neat looking. I could probably watch this all day. Alright guys, back to reality. Grab your stick blender and your lye solution and carefully place your stick blender into your oils. You're gonna, well, first you want to take the lid off your lye solution. Getting ahead of myself here. Alright, take the lid off your lye solution and carefully place your stick blender down into your oils. You're going to want to pour your solution down your stick blender to ensure that you don't have any splashing. Splashing lye solution can be dangerous. If you notice, I actually have a sheet covering the area where I'm working because it's not the normal place I would work for the purposes of this video and lighting. You just want to make sure that you protect all of your surfaces, all of your food, anything in that area, and yourself, of course. So you notice I'm pouring it down the stick blender just to avoid any splashing. Alright. So one of the things about the stick blender is you're going to want to avoid air bubbles. So you'll notice that I kind of swish it back and forth real quick here, and then I just give it one quick pulse and try to get any air bubbles out. Air bubbles can give you what's called a false trace by making the solution get thicker than it should be. So you see, darn it, air bubbles. So usually I've got a bit more solution in my containers. So I had to switch containers. So I've sped it up for you guys so that you're not, lulled to death by the amount of time it took to stick blend. So you can only imagine if this stick blender is as powerful as it is. And this is just a cheap, $20 one from Amazon. Pretty straightforward, nothing special at all about it. But it does take forever with the stick blender. So when you do it by hand, it is a very tiring process. Highly suggest if you plan on making cold process or hot process soap that you invest in a stick blender. Now you'll see here that the solution has stopped sliding around. That is a medium trace. Now I personally like to work most of the time with a thin trace, but getting a thin trace that is perfect can be a little bit tricky for a beginner. So I suggest starting by memorizing where the medium trace is, and then you can always back up for fancier designs. If you don't want to do a whole lot of designs in your soap, a medium trace is perfect. It's an easy stage to recognize and has a pretty good rate of your soap not failing on you, which can happen, and that makes it an expensive thing to do if you don't get it right. You'll see that I can literally move it around. It's not sliding on me, but it's also still quite thin. It's just got a nice viscosity to it that just clings, kind of like a real thin pudding. Alright, get out your container. Ta-da! And we're going to put half of our mixture into our vessel. So currently it's kind of a light pink. And you can be as neat or as messy with the design as you so please. I'm making this so simple that anybody can do it. I'm literally just taking that first layer, smoothing it around. You notice I'm giving it a few taps, making sure that there are no air bubbles in there. Now, if you don't mind air bubbles, no big deal. A few air bubbles never hurt anybody. Now we're going to take the rest of our mixture and we're going to add half of what's left in our little beaker. and we'll give that a stir. I love the color contrast in there. I apologize if the video quality is not as great as one would hope. I wasn't accustomed to filming myself soaping and the angles were different. So we're going to go ahead and add that second layer and just do it however you please. If you want to do blobs, if you want to do lines, layers, all of it, any of it, whatever you feel like doing. There are so many tutorials out there on different ways to make pretty things in your soap. Just have fun, make it your own. Now I'm just going to smooth that out a bit. If you notice, I'm not being too particular. We're just ladling it in, getting some variation. We're going to take the rest of our mixture and put the rest of our mica in there. And I'm just using that handy dandy silicone container to get what I could off that chopstick. And then I'm going to see what all I can get out of that container with that spatula. I usually use a slightly smaller one with this, but I did not have handy, so you work with what you got. And you know, soaping does not have to be a major investment for your supplies either. If you just go to the $1 store and get the containers and the spatulas, you know, and a stick blender, I'll even link one down below so that you can kind of get a kit going for yourself. So we're just going to blend the rest of that mica in. Now if you notice, I didn't use the stick blender for this part, I'm just doing it by hand. So just giving it a couple stirs in. Since we had that mica blended in that little bit of oil, it just blends right in so easily. And we're going to top it off here with the rest of that mixture. Now, I always try to be pretty frugal and get every last drop of soap out I can. Make sure that we're not being wasteful. So you'll see that here in a second I'm scraping my container off camera. So I stole that phrase from one of the other soapers I watch. Alright, so just flatten that out a little bit. You'll notice it's not perfect and it doesn't matter because we're going to let this sit for just a second here after we scrape everything off. And we're going to gather any type of tool that you please and we can decorate the top. Now if you want to leave it like that after you've just cleaned up the sides a bit, go ahead, no harm done. But if you want to make some nifty little designs and have some texture to it, then it's really easy to do. You can experiment with all kinds of tools. So in a second here you'll see that I just end up using a disposable spoon, and you can use forks, you can use, I've used kind of different little tools that came in a kit for Play-Doh before that made kind of like ridges on the top and scalloped edges. There are all kinds of things that you can think to use. You can take a piece of cardboard or plastic or even those little kind of like debit card looking things that come in the mail, and you can trim up a neat design on it and run it across the surface. It all makes cool designs. I'm going to take just the rest of the mica that's in that package just hanging out, and I'm going to use the spoon to kind of scrape the edges, get the rest of it loose, and just sprinkle it on top. So it's hard to see in the video the effect that the mica has on top, but on the finished bar, it just adds a few speckles, and the mica has kind of a glittery sheen to it, kind of like almost pearlescent, I suppose is a more appropriate word to say. So it just adds a little bit of visual effect on the top. It's absolutely not necessary whatsoever, but just try not to waste it and it looks neat. Now, one of the things I prefer about mica versus colorants is mica tends to not stain anything. So you'll notice I did kind of get mica off onto the sheet and all of that. I frequently get it on my clothes or sleeves, and it just comes right out. So I'm going ahead and taking that spoon, and you'll see I'm just giving it a smush. Now you want to be gentle. If you've let it set up to the right amount, that's all you have to do, just a gentle smush. If you let it sit too long, it starts to thicken up. At this point, it's like a very thick pudding. And I'm just blobbing along here. Once in a while for my soaps, I'll even take, some decorative soap shavings and put those on top, or any other number of little doodads. And you can buy all kinds of stuff to decorate your top of your soaps with, but this is just a plain little pretty bar. I'm just trying to pop down some of those peaks on the side, and there we go. All done. So now I'm actually going to put the lid to this container on, but if you don't have a lid to your container, just make sure that you put something over top to protect the soap from touching anything. Now you're going to want to take your soap and put it in an area that is going to be safe from pets and children, and that's also going to be nice and warm. When you have your loaf all ready and it's sat there overnight, the next day you're going to want to test it a little bit to see if the sides will come away from the soap nicely, and if they do, you're ready to unmold your soap. If they don't come off of the sides nicely, there's no harm in leaving it there for another day. Some soap will set up sooner than others. It really just depends on the amount of water in your recipe. Now this is a silicone mold, so it does come off my sides easily. For the recipe that I did today, it was sitting there less than 24 hours. Now the reason that I'm unmolding it when I'm unmolding it, you'll see towards the end of the video. Now generally speaking, I would have left it for about another 12 to 24 hours before I removed the bars and cut them, because you'll notice they're a little bit sticky and tacky as I'm trying to cut them. But it's for a very good reason, because at this stage, the soap is very versatile. So if you don't have a fancy cutter like this, you can by all means use an old kitchen knife that you don't intend on using for food purposes anymore. If you just have a bench scraper and not one of these nice dividers, then just use that to cut pieces. It's really not a big deal. If you've got an old cheese cutter with one of the wires on it, that's kind of like they kind of look like a little guillotine almost. Those work really well too. So you'll notice I took that first slice off here, and I'm just going to set that aside. Now you can see that we've got a little bit of that second color in the middle, but we didn't put nearly as much, so it's just kind of a nice transition. And you can also see a slightly discolored part in that bottom lighter pink. That's actually where it went through partial gel phase. There you go. So it's a nice little bar. And you can get creative. You'll notice that I use two different tools to cut my soap in this. That one there is a straight tool, and it just cuts straight down. That is what a bench scraper looks like. And then the other one that I have that I'll use in just a moment, it looks kind of like a crinkle cut French fry cutter. And yeah, you'll see that bar was kind of soft. It let kind of a squudge on the side there. Oh, you see that whole bar is stuck to my thing. All right, so I'm grabbing that one. Here we go. And so you can get pretty fancy without doing a whole lot to your bar. if you just got a simple colored bar and then take a crinkle cutter like that, and you get nice texture. And depending on which way you turn your bar, you can get different vertical or horizontal lines. So you can get very fancy when it comes to soap cutters. There's so many different kinds out there. But for someone who's just starting out but wants some very nice looking bars, this is a fantastic one. I'll go ahead and try to link that down below as well. All right. Look at that. So fun. And these are actually quite big chunky bars. Now I'm going to stop cutting there, and I'll show you what we're going to do with the rest. All right, so at this stage, like I said, I cut it a little bit before I normally would for my standard bars, and that's because with this recipe, with the correct mixture of hard and soft oils, you can literally bend it like it's Play-Doh. And this is so fun if you want to take some stress out, listen to a meditation, and mold that soap into something. You can color your dough orange and make little goldfish, or pink and make hearts, or this winter we did some white soap, so no colorant, but we used titanium dioxide to make it really white, and you can make little snowmen. So what I'm doing with this glob here is Easter's around the corner before too long, so I'm just making it look like an Easter egg. And you do have to use a little bit of extra force to get it into a ball because it is stiff. So the longer you let it sit, the harder it will get. So if you find that your dough is too soft, just let it set a little bit longer. And there you go. Now if you wanted to make bigger ones and hide a little trinket on the inside, those are always fun. You can, oh, there we go. You can do all kinds of stuff with kids and soap dough. Now you can't use this immediately. It does have to cure, so make sure that you follow your directions on your lye pages and soap calculators. Now this one here, I had taken and cut it, and it looked almost like a crinkle french fry, but it was pink. And we're just forming a circle with it. So you have a nice O. And then we're grabbing another piece, dividing that up, and I'm going to make an X with it. So if you take a little bit of rubbing alcohol and take this X and O, you can get it to stick to one of your bars and make a cute little 3D thing for your Valentine's Day bar if you so choose. Or you can make X's and O's, use them at bath time for younger kids. There's so many ways to do this.